Alright, so they made another movie to go with The Craft. Some people were talking about it being a remake, and I had heard mainly that it was a sequel. And after having watched it, apparently it's both, but it doesn't really matter anyway. This is basically just Blumhouse announcing that they're pretty much greenlighting fan fiction at this point. So the the writer and director is somebody that's known. It's Zoe Lister-Jones, who is an actress as well, and I know I have seen her around, but I can't tell you off the top of my head where or when. But yeah, so I said this basically just comes off like she was a fan of the first movie and basically made like a fan script sequel slash remake, and for some reason it got picked up and made. So now this exists, and I feel like if we weren't living in the time that we're living in right now, this still easily, absolutely would have been straight to streaming, because it just has that vibe. Since we're kind of in the post straight to video era, where things just go straight to streaming now, and straight to streaming might bring out even worse sides of the bad writers and directors that are out there. So yeah, and I am a pretty big fan of the first one. I did a video on it like forever ago. I think I did it and Suspiria in the same video. And this is like it's supposed to be a sequel, but it's basically a remake. Where we have the new girl that comes in, only instead of her just having her dad, now she just has her mom, and her mom is Michelle Monaghan, because we have to get at least a few recognizable faces in here. We have to really, really try. And the main girl is the girl from Bad Times at the El Royale. She was Dakota Johnson's sister in that. And it's the same setup. She comes in, and then there are the three witches that she goes to school with, and they identify her as their fourth one that they need. And then they cast hexes and spells and all that other stuff. Until there is a threat. But the threat now isn't one of their own or multiple of them. It's not really established until very late in. So we do have the fact that they are coming into town and they are moving in with David Duchovny, who is Michelle Monaghan's new love interest, and you kind of get a sense of something because Duchovny doesn't get a lot to work with here, but basically what happens is that he is one way in his first scene, like he's the sort of, hey, I'm the mom's new dude guy, and then he has a completely, seemingly different sort of way about himself for every other scene that he's in after this. So if that doesn't tell you something, you're probably blind. Um, and as far as the way the characters interact here, there is, for starters, there is a scene when they're coming into town at the very beginning, and her and her mom are singing in the car, and then she like halts the singing to just like start crying. And it's probably the closest thing we're gonna get to like a real character moment is right here at the beginning when this thing happens. So as it goes on and she goes to school and she meets everybody else, it's basically an adult writing teenagers. This is like peak Steve Buscemi saying, "How do you do, fellow kids?" There's a whole lot of buzzwords, and it's a lot of, like I said, it's basically like she skimmed like Twitter, and just sort of picked out random phrases, and it's like, oh, this is how people are talking now, so that's just going to be how these teenage characters talk, because it'll be really realistic dialogue, I guess, or something. I don't know. But we've talked about, real human moments here a couple of times now, and you might be saying, like, well, how, realistic does it need to be when it's a movie about witches? But the thing here is that we had a lot of character going on in the first one, where we had, like, Robin Tunney's story was, like, the whole thing, where her mom died in childbirth, and she's had this sort of almost guilt surrounding her since then, and a number of things. She's still trying to figure out what exactly this is that she has, and she feels like an outcast and all the other stuff. And we've got, Nancy obviously had the really troubled background with the really bad stepdad and the complacent mother. Nev Campbell had all the burns on her body, and Rachel True was getting facing racism in the form of Christine Taylor, among other ways. And they all had like those things going on individually. Like they were like you could almost imagine the movie from the perspective of each one of these characters. It just happened to be the Robin Tunney character that was our sort of point of view. I can't even begin to imagine that here. Like none of them stand out. Even the main character really doesn't stand out. But it's like as far as like giving them any sort of emotional context whatsoever, there's literally none. Like it's not like they try to give them more character and they just do it badly. No, it's just not there at all. It all goes into this one main character and the other three are just kind of there. Like there's a point in time where we have our sort of I guess our Skadar stand-in, and they don't quite do the love spell thing. It's more of I guess I'm just going on what I was seeing. I guess it's more like a woke spell or something. So that's what his character turns into after being like kind of the bully character to her after a traumatic first day of school. But the fact that they put more focus on him than the other three characters is you can immediately feel like there's like a miscalculation here on what this movie should be focusing on and where the fun in the first movie was. Because when you talk about them doing like all the different things, like the scene when they do the floating, was like a really big moment in the first movie where it was like they were all like, holy shit, we can actually do this. They do the floating scene again in this, and it's in the middle of a montage. There's just there's a lot of montages in this. There's way too many montages in this. And that's pretty much how they show off the witchcraft part of the movie. Rather than it being literally what the movie is about. No, it gets totally sidetracked on her having feelings for this dude and the way this dude fits in with his, like, it's weird how much background we get on this dude compared to the other three characters we should be focusing on. I don't know what the hell happened here. It's like while she was writing it, she got distracted and forgot what movie she was writing, or even the type of movie that she was writing. It's like forget apparently trying to stay in your own story. You're getting out of the genre as you're going. And it's like, why don't you come back a little bit, because you're straying away from the whole appeal of what's going on here and what the concept is and literally the craft that's in your title. But I don't know what that was about. But when you see these montages of them doing that stuff, like the floating, it's sort of like these were easily probably could have been the best scenes in the movie, and they're literally just skipped over. They are fast forwarded through for some reason to fit more time in with her and the dude, I guess. I don't know who this movie is going to please. Who is this? Like, who comes into this movie wanting that and not what we're just fast forwarding through? I don't know. And I'm not even saying, like, do the same things. Because obviously I was on its case about basically being a remake, even though it's supposed to be a sequel. But it's like, I'm not saying, like, do the same things, but it's like, since you have chosen to do the same things, can you try to actually do them, at least? Like, you can't, like, it's one thing to say, do it your own way, but you've got to, like, accept the fact that you have chosen this as what you're doing, then come to the conclusion that, oh, and I need to do my own thing with it. But we're like, the writer is so many, like, steps behind what's going on here. And the fact that she's also the director kind of shows you that this, like, if this is how poorly put together it is in the writing, the direction's nothing to really... I mean, it's not necessarily bad direction, but it's like, it's just there. It just looks like a straight-to-streaming movie or a TV movie or something. So, yeah, and then once we get to that point, like I said, there's no, like, apparent threat or, like, a building threat right away that like hooks us. We're just supposed to go on the really basic ass characters that really aren't doing a whole lot character wise. It's just really that I guess the way they talk to each other in this sort of we're really trying to be like clueless dialogue only to fit 2020, and there's so much weird focus on that. Like I don't even remember there being like it's almost like this movie's trying to be a capsule of 2020, whereas the original movie is just like naturally 90s. Like it just is itself, and that's what it feels like. Which in itself totally fits the tone of the movie or the message of the movie or whatever. But no, this one's like trying so hard to be so 2020 about itself and the way its characters are that it doesn't seem like much focus was put on anything else, especially a story. Like, is there even like I struggle to even describe a story. It's just like it's just these are the characters, and we only really know their types because we're familiar with the first movie. So once there's finally a threat in like the last 20 minutes, if that, then what's and by the way, I say that it's like there's maybe like 20 minutes left when there's an actual threat. Yeah, this for I don't know why, but this has 10 full minutes of end credits. So it's significantly shorter than it even looks. So I don't know. So there's nothing another thing that really stands out that was such an appealing factor about the first movie is that there's really nothing dark about this one at all. Like there's no like even aesthetically there, there's nothing dark to it. But as far as like the mood of it and the atmosphere of it and the way they explore like the consequences of power in the first movie and all that stuff, none of that is here whatsoever. It is so it's like way too lighthearted about everything it's going into, like the witchcraft aspect and everything. Like it's like you'd almost think it's almost trying to be a full-on comedy about itself. Like it so strays away from any dark material whatsoever. And any stuff that tries to be dark is so laughable you can't even really tell if it's even going for that. Like I said, I have a couple of scenes in mind, but I'm not even sure if that was even their intention. So that's how vague everything is. And then eventually we get, of course, naturally, I mean, if there's no particular... and of course, it's not going to be an interesting threat whatsoever, because it's definitely not going to be anywhere near as interesting as, like, Nancy Downs gets way too powerful, and then Neve Campbell and Rochelle kind of get wrapped up in that also, and it's basically 3-on-1 after a while. Nothing like that. No powerful character dynamics like that whatsoever. It's just going to be a random-ass, generic-ass threat. And this, I swear, the climax is like 30 seconds long. I don't even know that there is a climax. It's just... They do a reveal that we already know, because like I said, we're not blind. And then there's like a pretty quick and easy solution to this. And it's what's interesting about that is they're trying to get to a reveal at the end. Like they've got a little surprise in store, which would be a really cool surprise. But for starters, it's like they're basically trying to fast forward through the entire movie just to get to it. It's almost like Zoe Lister-Jones had the idea in her head of like, what if there was another movie for The Craft and this was the last scene in it? And then she just wrote something lazily just to get to that point. But the thing about that also is that we don't get to, like, relish in it. It's literally a reveal, cut to credits before anything can even... Before it barely even registers what we're looking at. It just cuts to credits. So, I don't know if it's, like, sequel bait. I mean, I don't know. I really don't know. So this is an exercise in, like, complete and utter futility. This movie has no purpose for existing that I can possibly think of. It's just here. So I don't know who thought this was I don't know who thought this needed to be made. I really have no idea why this would need to be made from anybody's perspective. But like I said, there's some things in here where like maybe it was an interesting idea, and it's the execution that's off. But I don't know. I don't really see that many interesting ideas either that aren't very surface level. So I don't know. But like I said, really also the main thing that's missing here is characters that are really interesting, especially with like I said, with all of them having their own different things, and the fact that we had such an appealing cast in Robin Tunney and Neve Campbell and Rachel True, and not even exaggerating, Fairuza Balk is like awards worthy in the first movie, and there's nothing even close to that here. So I, yeah, it's just it's it's just pointless, which usually means it's relatively harmless. Like you can just forget that it exists. But it's like it's actually a bummer that it was botched this much. That it's so like lifeless and like careless. I guess I don't know. It just there's nothing here I can think of that's worthwhile. But it's not even necessarily like an infuriating movie. Like usually when I'm saying stuff like this, I'm like really, really frustrated with it. But it's like it's just so insignificant that I just don't feel anything towards it. Like it's just here. That's all it is. So that's I guess that's pretty much all there is to say about it. I'm kind of surprised I was able to squeeze this much time out of it. But that's pretty much where we can leave this. So there's gonna be a few more like reviews and verses and stuff like that, and we're gonna. I'm running out of time, so we're gonna kind of this horror thing is gonna kind of bleed into like maybe the first week in November, as I try to catch up. But once we get to there, then we'll figure out what's going on. There should be more like Friday new releases should be more of a continuous thing, especially since we're getting into like the prestige stuff like Fincher's new movie and stuff like that. Which I think might be December, but November and December we should start getting that stuff hopefully relatively regularly. So all of that stuff to hopefully look forward to, and hopefully nothing as completely pointless as this. So until whatever that next stuff is, I think that's it.